In this video, I'll talk about different types of conversations. When I think about any conversation I've had in the past, I can basically break it down into three different styles of communication, or three different ways that people talk to each other. The first type of conversation is light vibing. The second type is all about facts, ideas, and opinions. And the third type is about emotional connections. And I'll explain a lot more about each different type in just a second. But if you look to the right of the video, you'll see there's an arrow pointing down. And then I wrote down stranger, acquaintance, and friend. And basically what that means is that you have these different types of conversations, usually with different people. For light vibing, that's usually the type of conversation you have with people you don't know that well, with strangers. And then facts, ideas, and opinions that you might talk about with acquaintances. And then you usually only go into emotional connections with people who are friends, or maybe with someone who you want to form a romantic connection with. So the first type of conversation is light vibing. And the reason why I call it vibing is because the point of this type of conversation is basically to create a positive vibe or atmosphere. This type of conversation is commonly called small talk. So when you talk to someone in this way, it's not about having interesting content to your conversation. It's mostly about creating a positive social rhythm. So when two people first meet, they usually both have a fairly light chat about empty topics. The stereotypical example of this is when two strangers meet on the street and they discuss the weather. One person might say, "Nice day today, isn't it?" And the other person says, "Yeah, I'm really enjoying walking outside today." Or maybe if you meet a stranger at a business conference, one person might make a comment about the conference, and the other person also says some kind of empty comment too. So the point of this small talk or vibing is to allow both of the people to get a sense of what the other person is like. So they're not really talking in order to get information, or in order to learn something, or in order to create a connection. They're just talking to get a sense of what the other person is like. And by having this type of a light, content-free conversation at the beginning, it gives both people time to decide if they want to go deeper and share themselves or get to know this person more. So if you meet someone new and you try to immediately try launching into a deep discussion, you immediately start trying to ask them personal questions and trying to dive deep into their life, that's going to be kind of weird because you're both strangers. So this is almost like a bridge when you first get to know people. And in fact, even if you've known someone for a long time, you might still sometimes talk to your friend in a very light, positive, joking way, where you two aren't really talking about anything interesting. You might just be joking around and just talking just to share a positive social experience. This is probably your weakest area, your weakest type of conversation. See, many people who are introverted, they're very logical and they like to have deeper discussions, which is good in a way, but it's bad because when you're meeting someone new, you're usually not going to have that type of deep discussion right away. You're going to have more of a light type of discussion. And if you're too logical and you're not connected to to how conversations feel, if you're not connected to the emotional feeling side of communication, then it's going to be hard to have this type of light vibing, which you need to do when you're first getting to know someone. The next type of conversation is about facts, ideas, and opinions. So this is a more logical exchange. It's a bit deeper than vibing, in that you might get to know the person a little bit if you're talking about each other's opinions about stuff. But if you stay only talking about facts and ideas and opinions, you're still not going to really know the other person that you're talking to. This type of conversation is very common, for example, in co-worker and professional relationships. So imagine in a past job that you had, where you might have had a coworker and you enjoy talking about different topics with your coworker, but then you never saw that coworker outside of your workplace, and you didn't really know too much about that coworker's life. So basically, you talked about facts, ideas, and opinions with that person, but you never really got to know them. You just stayed, situational friends in the workplace, and probably if you left that job, you probably didn't really stay in touch with that coworker because you never went deeper than this layer of facts, ideas, and opinions. This type of conversation is, I think, a part of almost every conversation that people have, because people are always discussing different events, facts, ideas, and opinions with each other. A lot of introverts are fairly strong in this area, especially if you're passionate about a topic and you meet someone else who has a common interest with you. You could probably talk about facts and ideas with that other person for a long, long time. And the last type of conversation is emotional connection. This is commonly called rapport in a lot of books and courses on conversation. And emotional connection is obviously feeling like you understand each other. The reason why this is important in conversation is because everyone wants to feel understood. And yet, when most people talk, they're not really listening to the other person. I mean, even you probably think that you're a good listener, but chances are you're not listening enough. You might be trying to figure out what you're going to say next as the other person's talking. You might be thinking how you're going to relate to what the other person is saying, but you're not truly listening and making the other person feel understood. Most people are just waiting for their own turn to speak in conversation. So obviously, one part of emotional connection is understanding the other person, and the other part of emotional connection is also sharing yourself. Usually when you're forming a friendship or a relationship with somebody else, you have to form that emotional connection. And usually you form this connection symmetrically. This means that you're both each sharing a little bit more of yourselves, of what you're really like, as the relationship deepens. You share a bit of yourself, the other person shares a bit of themselves, and then you share something a little bit more deeper, and then the other person shares something a little bit deeper. And by doing it this way, you can, over time, build up a very deep connection and trust. Now, shyness and social anxiety often make connection difficult because of a fear of self-disclosure. A lot of people who have social anxiety aren't comfortable with themselves, so they don't share themselves with other people. For example, even back like a year or two ago, if I stayed in on the weekend and I didn't really do anything interesting, on the weekend, and then somebody asked me, "What did you do this weekend?" I would often have a lot of trouble sharing that, I just had a quiet weekend, because I had social anxiety. I had that fear of self-disclosure. It's really a fear of rejection, which makes you uncomfortable with sharing yourself. And when you have this fear of rejection, you're not going to be able to form emotional connections with people. And obviously, you can connect with people at different levels. Sometimes you connect with people just a little bit, and other times, maybe if you have a girlfriend or boyfriend, you might connect with them very deeply, and you really get to know each other very, very deeply. And I think deeper connections are appropriate and they're useful for, romantic dates. If you've known someone for a long time, you can deepen your friendship by creating a deeper connection. This type of conversation doesn't happen much in group conversations. In fact, it almost never happens in group conversations. When you're talking to people in groups, especially large groups, the conversation is usually more about just joking around, sharing a positive vibe, or sharing facts, ideas, and opinions. Emotional connections don't usually happen. This is more of like a one-on-one type of conversation. Now, to be fair, a lot of conversation skills books out there do actually focus on listening to the other person and being interested, and they think this is going to make that other person like you. But those books do miss an important part of the equation, which is for the other person to value and welcome a connection with you, they first have to value you. In other words, you first have to come across as having equal or higher social status for someone to actually appreciate you being interested in them and trying to form a connection. So if you're shy and insecure, then simply being interested isn't usually going to make someone like you automatically, unless that other person also feels like they're shy and low status. And I'll give you a real life example of what I mean here. So one thing that I've kind of put a focus on over the past year is learning how to meet girls and meet women. So I often have been going out to bars and to clubs, and I see guys approaching women. And often when the guy approaches, he's trying to form an emotional connection with the woman. He'll ask her questions like, what do you do? Where are you from? He'll probably ask her a lot of questions about herself and try to get to know her. But the problem is, if the guy who's trying to form this emotional connection doesn't have confidence, if the woman doesn't find him attractive, then she'll usually reject him. The woman first has to find the man attractive for her to welcome him trying to form an emotional connection with her. And whether you want to improve your dating life, whether you want to have new friends, or you want to create a connection with a business partner, it's always the same. That other person has to first value you. They have to see you as having some kind of status or a certain type of power before they're going to appreciate you being interested in them. So how do you actually get this status so that you can then connect with people? Well, a big part of it is simply having confidence. Confidence communicates power and higher social status. So I'll be talking a lot about how to achieve, real confidence later in this program in the other modules. So to finish up this video, I don't want you to think that, each conversation that you've ever had has been only one type of conversation. No conversation is strictly one type. It's almost always a combination of two or three. So for example, you might meet up with an old friend, you might joke around with that friend for a few minutes, which is vibing, and then you might talk about a mutual hobby or interest for a bit, which is facts, and then your friend might later share an issue in his life, which is connection. Or maybe you go on a date with someone, and when you first met them, you might have just been vibing, so you might have just been, flirting and joking around a bit. and then on the date you don't really talk too much about facts or ideas, but you mostly talk about each other's past, and you focus on creating that emotional connection. So, each conversation you're ever going to have is going to have an element of all three of these types. And it's important that you find your weak points, find the type of conversation that you're weakest at, and then work on improving it. So if you're not good at vibing, then meeting new people and having group conversations is going to be difficult. You're going to have a hard time keeping up with that more light, fun, and spontaneous type of conversation. If you're not good at vibing, then you might go to a party and you might spend your whole time kind of standing off to the side and not really talking to too many people or having too much fun. Now, on the other hand, if you aren't good at connection, then you may meet people that you enjoy talking to, but you won't be able to turn these people into friends, and you'll probably still feel lonely. And finally, if you're not good at the facts, ideas, and opinions part of conversation, then in the next video, I'm going to show you a simple technique that will make it very easy to carry on a logical type of conversation with people.